Good evening, everybody. We're live. We are in the zone. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter, and we are absolutely fired on all pistons right here in the zone. Final Four is up. We took a Sunday night show. We went live, and we wanted to give it to you straight. So we're going to give it you one of the first coverages of the whole thing. Pete agreed to come in on Sunday. When I said Sunday, I didn't realize it was Easter Sunday. When I first said Sunday, then Pete hung on, I hung on, and all of the turkey in my house has been devoured. I had a really, really nice family day. But, oh my goodness, this tournament has not disappointed. And this tournament has been full of surprises. The Final Four is now set, folks. The Final Four has now arrived. You have the UConn Huskies playing unbelievable basketball. We're going to talk about all these teams in depth right now. Alabama, again, a team I was critical of, a team I said I don't know that they belong with the ranking that they had, the seeding that they had, but boy, have they proved me wrong. Coach Oates and the Crimson Tide doing a great, great, great job. NC State, the big fella, Cinderella, coming in with an unbelievable 5-game run in the ACC tournament and now knocking off ACC foe Duke in what just finished right now is really, really a great game. But that second half was absolutely dominated by NC State. Congratulations to Coach Kate and his team, his staff. What an amazing job. And this is what March Madness is all about. And now you have Purdue, the big fella, Zach Edey. They played today as well. And we'll talk about that game in depth a little bit as well. There's a lot of people hooting and hollering right now about Tennessee and Purdue and the differentials in the fouls. But we'll talk about that too, because that's not as big a deal as everybody's making it out to be. Because when you talk about the number of touches, and that's something we'll reference when we speak here, we talk about the number of touches. Purdue pounded the ball inside to the big guy time and time and time again, and they said, stop us if you can. And that's their approach. We're going to use Zach Edey as a battering ram. We're going to knock down the door of the castle, and then once the castle door is down, then everybody else can take over. But right now, Coach Painter, staff, and the players especially have really bought into the big guy as their battering ram, and they're using them, and they're knocking down doors. So this is shaping up to be an absolutely exciting and enthralling Final Four, because you have a couple of overlays in the stories here already, and I wanted to talk about that just very briefly before we actually jump into the nuts and bolts of what happened, how did we get here, what's going to happen moving forward. And in the zone with our Sunday live shows, we've just been giving you information that's on top of exactly on the minute, and so that's been really cool as well, because so much in this NCAA tournament is surrounded by Friday, Saturday action, and then we'll have our abilities to get into this thing as we get closer to the final. But this is the absolute high time of college basketball right now, moving into the Final Four. And we're going to talk about how some of this has impacted some of the coaching changes as well. And in that many of these coaching changes that have taken place, you have 51 that have taken place, change hands right now. We're in about the 13-14% range of all the jobs there on a given year. I don't think that that's always been healthy, but it is what it is. But when you have the 51 jobs changing hands, you're looking at this thing, through a different kind of paradigm now, because everything is moving around. Everything is orbiting everything. You have the NIL, you have the portal, you have the coaching changes, you have everything shifting and moving, and the plate tectonics are really, really starting to shift underneath. When we talked about the portal, we termed it last week the portal potty, or the porta potty, as we say. At the concerts that we attend.
Yep.
This is what I'm going to add now. Is last week we reported that there were 550 entrants into the portal, and people were making an assertion, and it's a correct assertion, that is close to 10% of the entire population.
Of NCAA Division I, right?
NCAA Division I, 10% of the entire population. Now, in the zone, keeping you up to date, keeping you pumped up, keeping you super pumped about everything that's going on in basketball. Right now, we're at over 1,000, Pete.
Wow.
We're at over 1,000. And here's a number that I want people to keep in mind. 4,706.
Okay.
How did I arrive at that number? You have 362 Division I basketball teams. On the men's side, they are allotted 13 full scholarships. So I took out my handy-dandy calculator on my phone, and I multiplied 362 times 13. That number comes out to 4,706. That's the total number of scholarships available in the given year. Now, I could stipulate that some of this action might be occurring in that 14 and 15 spot that are walk-ons, that might not be under scholarship. But for the most part, this is all scholarship players moving and grooving.
That's the minimum number of people.
Let's not kid ourselves.
Right. That's the minimum
That's
number.
that's the minimum, right? So you got 4,706. As of right now, you have over 1,000. What will that number look like when it's totally done? If it gets into the 1,200, 1,300 range, which I think it will easily do, and this is only Division I right now, you're looking at a 25% change rate. And is that sustainable? Is that healthy? Is that good for the game? I don't think any of it
What does that
is.
look like for the tournament next year if everybody's moving around like that? I mean, seriously.
Well, this is what I said a while back. One of the successes of the UConn program was that of the 362 programs 2 years ago, maybe it was a little bit before that, but of all of the 362 programs, there were only 2 who did not have a player registered in the portal. University of Connecticut, Danny Hurley and his program was one of the programs that did not have a player in the portal. I'm not sure what their approach is, but it's working because they've been able to keep this going with such great consistency over this period of time. So here's a couple of the underlays. Danny Hurley has a brother, Bobby Hurley. Both great players. Bobby played at Duke and was on the national championship team, played for Coach Krzyzewski, and is currently the basketball coach at Arizona State. Okay? Now, Danny has really done great in the coaching end of it. His dad is the all-time greatest coach in New Jersey history and nationally one of the greatest high school coaches of all time. But now you have, on the other side of Danny Hurley, is this gentleman by the name of Nate Oates. And Nate Oates got his start at the university, not his start, but got a little bit of a career bump at the University of Buffalo working for Danny Hurley's brother, Bobby.
Okay.
So Bobby was at the University of Buffalo, did well, and left. Nate Oates took over the Buffalo job and did really, really well. And so therefore they used that as a spring job. But I thought it was interesting that the Hurley family has kind of been very, very integral in Coach Oates' rise at Alabama. And I thought that was one of the overlays of the thing that was pretty interesting. I think also when you get into it and you look at all of the 4 coaches in there right now, you're looking at 4 coaches that have really, really good coaching resumes, really, really good coaching records. And so I think this lays out as a really, really solid Final Four as well. When we're talking about UConn against Alabama, I think that's the marquee matchup right there.
Yeah.
I talked a lot of times about the script here, about Purdue with Virginia, Purdue returning with the eye of the tiger, and right now they seem to have it. Listening to Zach Edey's post-game comments, he certainly seems fired up and ready to go and feels like they have been maybe undervalued and underrated as they've gone through this, but they seem to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. I think you're pointing towards a really good final game, one way or the other. NC State is the spoiler here, though. NC State is the spoiler to this whole thing. They're playing unbelievable basketball right now, and they are absolute junkyard dog.
Their big man is he's just a ball of fun to watch.
He's, like I said, he's 6'9", 275. That makes him 6'9" this way and 6'9" this way.
Right.
And I'll be really interested to see what Purdue does with that. Because most teams have taken, and the same thing they've done with Purdue as well. In both of these situations, you have really very, very hard to guard big men. Very, very hard to guard big men. Will you now shift up your coverage? Will you double team him? Will you rotate? Will you go to zone? Will you pack it tight? It depends now what's going to happen here. But if you're looking towards that game next week, you're looking at that matchup as being an absolute critical matchup, because if you don't stop DJ Burns, you can't stop the rest of them. They have very, very good players around him.
I mean, NC State Purdue is a big man showdown.
It's going to be, and I think it's going to be a condition also about how it's officiated, because both of those players are going to get a lot of touches, going to be one-on-one in the low post, and that's difficult to officiate. And if you saw today, Tennessee was complaining that Zach Edey, they got every call, they did this, they did that. I think it's also a tribute to Coach Painter and his staff for being disciplined and pounding that ball inside to the big man as much as they did. So I think there's a little bit of both going on there. A couple of different things that went on in the tournament. One thing I wanted to share, I think I mentioned this on the show a little bit at another time, was if you go by the jump shot, you die by the jump shot. But there's two different things at play here, and I wanted to talk about that. North Carolina, their great guard, R.J. Davis, came out in the NCAA tournament, had a phenomenal career, phenomenal tournament, got into a game, a really, really tough game against Alabama, and goes 0 for 9 from three-point range. Really, really tough game. Caleb Love from Arizona got into it. They matched up with Clemson. Clemson put a good match on him. Again, 0 for 9. Because they were sitting outside, taking advantage of those three-point shots, but again, not penetrating, not getting into the lane, and not doing that other stuff kind of turns you into a perimeter player. And when you turn yourself into that type of perimeter player, it's difficult. And sometimes you'll have really, really good games, and then when that bad game comes, and that's exactly what happened to both of those gentlemen, that bad game came at the really, really wrong time, and 0 for 9, 0 for 9 on the other side.
Right, you go cold, that's it.
It's if that's all you have in the bucket, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be in trouble. So I just wanted to mention that because Caleb Love was 5 for 18. He was 0 for 9. The other guy, R.J. Davis, and they've both had sensational, sensational years. It's funny also that they used to be teammates. R.J. Davis, imagine if Caleb Love had stayed with that backcourt they would have, but R.J. 4 for 20, 0 for 9. That was rough day. But you have to attribute also Alabama's defense and Clemson's defense, because they made them take bad shots and they forced them into difficult situations. Now, the other piece of it is Alabama. If you watch their approach to basketball is a little bit different than everybody else's, in that almost every single shot that they take from the outside is a three-point shot. So back in the day, when I was assistant coach, and a lot of times, and you'll see assistant coaches on the bench, if you watch closely, they'll have a clipboard in their hand, and they'll be responsible for reporting information to the head coach. One assistant coach's job is to keep track of fouls. All right? Hey, big guy's got 2, coach, we got to get him out. Coach is running up and down the sidelines, he doesn't notice. Hey, big guy's got 3, we got to get him out. So that's one assistant coach's job. Now it's a little bit more technology driven, but they may still have an assistant coach doing it. But this was back when I first started in the business 40 years ago, is you would be as a coach, as an assistant coach, you would sit there and you would have a half moon basketball court in front of you. And every single shot that the team took, you would write down the player's number and where on the floor he took the shot from.
Chart the spot, yeah.
The spot. And then, whether it was successful or not, a circle goes around the good shot and no circle around the bad shots. So if you looked at Oklahoma or some of the other teams that play very, very perimeter-oriented stuff, you'll see an awful lot of three-point shooting in that. But Alabama has taken that to an absolutely new level, in that when you see their shot chart around the basket, right around the basket area, they have a bunch of what you would refer to as gimmies or dunks. And then when you look at the rest of the floor, because there's a huge distance between where the basket is and then out to the three-point line. And if you look at the difference from right around the basket to out to the three-point line, Alabama is non-existent in that middle area. Alabama is non-existent on the shot chart, in that every other single one of those shots they take is a three-point shot. That's their philosophy. That's what they've gone to. And it's nouveau. It's in the European model system. They got all of their guys laying out on that line and shooting the ball from deep. And they have also gotten to a point, I think, where they have their high expected value shots pretty much notch you down because Mark Sears, their great player, is averaging like somewhere between 12 and 14 threes a game. They're just giving him the absolute green light. And then they have a couple of players that come off their bench that have been very productive, but they don't have everybody shooting them. But the guys that shoot them seem to be the guys that are lighting it up. And so I thought that was an interesting take in that.
There you go. There's the shot chart for Alabama Clemson.
There you go. Pete, you're amazing, man. You are absolutely a killer, Pete. Look at it. And so that's what I'm talking about with the Alabama stuff. Look at that stuff that's in the lane. But look out to I would call it like the A crew area. It's tan. It's the area that's not in the paint, and it's the area that's inside the three-point line. Look at the amount of shots they take there. There's not a lot of them. Then look outside on the three-point line. I'll give you a stat on them. 36 out of 62.
I mean, it looks like Clemson had a balanced attack, right? But Alabama's just all at the arc.
Well, no, if you look at Clemson on the other side, they're exactly the same thing.
Well,
Clemson's red.
No, Alabama's red.
Right. So Clemson, look, they're the exact same thing. They have all their shots in and around the basket. They took one shot, it seems, that was inside the three-point line.
Yeah.
That was and some of those shots are the ones that take place at the end of the half or the end of when they're just kind of making a runner. But look at that commitment to what they're absolutely doing there on that three-point line. Now, Alabama had a little bit more mix there than Clemson did, but look at Clemson's right around the basket there. Everything was made. Everything went in. All of those are circles. Then look out to the three-point line and look at a lot of those missed shots. And you can almost – I had a friend tell me one time because they run something that's called a two-sided break, and you can almost get to a point where you can dictate where your team – which side of the floor your team shoots better from. And if I'm looking to split that floor right down the middle on the Clemson side, I say Clemson shoots the ball better from the right side of the floor than they do from the left side of the floor. And that's kind of – if you look in the corners are a little more populated for Clemson. The Alabama team doesn't shoot as much out of the dead of corner. They're much more up around what I consider to be the three fruitful spots of shooting, that 1, 2, 3 spot, the one that's dead center and the ones that are right off on the angle there. But, Pete, thank you for that. That was
courtesy
amazing.
ESPN for that one.
ESPN, but, Pete, you found it on the go because that was something we just pulled out. All right, so now we're here. Now we're in the Final Four. How did we get here? What did we do to get here? What did the teams do to get there? So, Pete, you want to take a start on one of these teams? Who do you like?
Let's
start
in
Connecticut
the East.
Going all the way.
Yeah, let's start in the East.
Let's start with the East. Pete's got the brackets up, and we call him MVPete for a reason. He's got game, and Christy Oman has been fortunate enough to figure that out, and they're engaged and doing great stuff and so exciting. But right here on Easter, we're in here doing In the Zone. And can you do me a favor and just blow that kind of little bit up for me, please, so I can take a closer look? Now you see UConn. They held Terrence Shannon. So, of course, you always have these conferences, press conferences, that they have at these games. And coaches are usually very careful when they're speaking during those press conferences, not to put too much on the other team's board, on their cork board, as we say. And if you look at UConn's MOV, what we call their margin of victory, it's been absolutely staggering. And so some of the talk back and forth with the UConn stuff, and Danny Hurley alluded to some of this post-game, was that they had made some comments that the Big Ten is just like the Big East, and they've seen teams like UConn before, and this is nothing special for them. And I got to be honest with you, that game was a JV game.
It started off a little bit chippy right at the beginning, but then UConn just wore them. After the half, they just blew them out.
It's what they do. It's what they do. This is the other parallel I wanted to draw. You had a situation too, because we're on UConn now, I can talk about this a little bit more in depth. We talked about some parallels out there. The last team, in my estimation, to go back-to-back was Billy Donovan's Florida team. And they were unbelievable. For 2 years, they went up and down the floor. They just looked rhythmic. They looked beautiful together because everybody knew what everybody was doing. It was an unbelievable run. Now you have Coach Hurley back in the Final Four after a very, very convincing run through the field last year. Won the NCAA title game. It wasn't close. Took care of everybody that was in their business. And now they walk into the game, and there's a little bit of smack talk going on with everybody. And the coach is saying, well, we see this in the Big Ten. And Danny Hurley, was dealing with some comments that said, they haven't seen a player like Terrence Shannon yet. And so Danny Hurley alluded to the Big East and some of the great teams that they play there and some of the great players that are in there. But at the end of the day, what goes on the scoreboard or what happens in the game is the only thing that's going to define what goes on. They absolutely throttled Illinois. And I think what has people thinking about this back-to-back, much like the Florida team when they were rolling and going back-to-back, when you look at this UConn team, everybody wants to beat them. Everybody wants to be the team that knocked them off. Everybody goes out there with this highly competitive, focus and desire, but they just control you and they just manhandle you. And they have so many different people at so many different positions that can hurt you.
They're beating teams by 20 a pop.
Beating them, the MOV is ridiculous. But here's the huge difference that I want our In the Zone fans to really, really encapsulate. This is the real difference that I want everybody to really get their arms around here. That Florida team was made up of a group of gentlemen that stayed together. There was no portal. There was no NIL. It was a group of gentlemen that stayed together and developed, as Pete and I say, team chemistry. You can't substitute team chemistry. And Florida built that up. What makes this run with Danny Hurley a little bit different than that is that he had to replace a significant portion of his team. Donovan had almost everybody returning for 2 straight years. They had their entire starting 5 for 2 straight years. And they ran through teams and did a great job. No diminishing that fact. But I think when you look at this in a microcosm and look what the UConn staff has done, what Danny Hurley has done over this period of time, they're absolutely dominant. They set the record for out-of-conference wins this year. They've set all sorts of different records. First outright Big East title, won the Big East tournament. They're absolutely, watching them go into gym and practice. They're running up and down stairs. They're absolutely full throttle right now.
Not only did they have to replace players, but they get this sword of Damocles over their heads, and they don't lose anybody to the portal. You know what I mean? Like, that's just unheard of right now.
Everybody's losing people.
That's what I'm saying.
North Carolina's losing people. Duke is losing people. Everybody's losing people. Somehow down at UConn, they've established this program integrity, and they're living by it. And right now, even the players that they bring in for 1 year, Cam Spencer, player that was at Rutgers, they brought him in. And he's got 1 year to stay with them, but he's bought into what they do 110%. Danny Hurley credits him as being one of the great reasons that they're in the position they are right now is because he's such a what coaches refer to as a dog. All right, so Terrence Shannon got held to 2 for 12. Now, I think Terrence Shannon's going to be on our NBA draft board. He's going to be in the top 15 or 20 picks taken overall, in my opinion. We go up to 25, but I think that would be a push. But again, they locked him up and they put a lockdown on Shannon, and that put a lockdown on Illinois. Illinois didn't have an answer after that. Now, what is making UConn click this year? It's been really, to me, the emergence of Donovan Clingan, the big man. He had 10 blocks in an NCAA game going into the Elite Eight, at 10 blocks. And if you ask me, this isn't entirely their fault. A stat crew, the hardest thing for a stat crew to measure and to metric are block shots. Did he block it? Did he get a piece of it? I don't know. Did he touch it? It's really hard. And so it's not easy. And so they credited him for 10. I'd say he was probably more along the lines of 11 and 12 and absolutely dominated the paint. They're running pick and rolls, and UConn is running a drop on the pick and roll. Meaning they're dropping their big man all the way out, and they're saying, we'll catch you at the rim. And Clingan has done an unbelievable job of dropping out, taking that dribbler down, and blocking shots, and really doing a great job. I'm really, really impressed with him right now. He had 22 points, 10 rebounds, and he was 9 for 13. I mean, you're not going to stop them if that continues. If there's a matchup between Donovan Clingan and Zach Edey, I think you're going to see an unbelievable NCAA clash of the Titans if that happens to be the matchup. It really will be. And I'll say this again. Pete and I, And you're going to go back and watch show 3, 4, 5 last year when we first jumped in. And one of the first things we did was our NBA draft selection. And we said last year that if Zach Edey had come out, we would have put him in our top group of selected. We would have made Zach Edey one of our lottery picks. And for the entirety of this year, I have watched in absolute amazement and how all the prognosticators have gone on and on and on about this player and that guy from France and the G League Ignite, which now just ignited and went up in full flames. And I don't know how many G League Ignite players are the dominant players in the NBA right now. I don't see a lot of them. But to say that this gentleman wasn't on anybody's draft board, now you're starting to see him show up, Pete. Now they're starting to listen to In the Zone. We've seen him at 14. Now they're saying lottery pick. You're absolutely right. He's 7'4". Are there things for him to work on? Yes. But you can work on those same things with your guy who's 6'9", and there's one thing he'll never be, 7'4". Okay. Cam Spencer is the gentleman that we talked about, the one who comes in for Rutgers, glue guy, open shooter, he'll kill you. Yeah. And he also is one of the guys Danny Hurley credits for their team culture in that we don't want any of that nonsense in here. We're here to win. We're here to take care of business, and they do a great job of it. He's about 6'2", 6'3", maybe, 6'4". He's got decent size to him, but he's not,
But he has no fear driving the paint.
He has no fear of driving. He shoots the ball great from the outside, but he had 12 rebounds and 5 assists in the game the other night. That's what UConn does. They share the ball. And their players on the wings, Newton and some of the other guys that they have on the wings, absolutely share that ball beautifully. I love watching them play. Cam Spencer, this is something I think that scares people that are rooting against UConn. In the last game, they went 3 for 17 from three-point range.
Yep.
17% and won by 25 points.
Yep.
You sit there and go through that again. 3 for 17. Most coaches are sitting there going, oh, my God, we better hold on to this one. 17% shooting percentage from three-point range and absolutely throttled one of the best teams in the entire country and the Big Ten.
As they fell into their rhythm in the second half, it was just unbelievable to watch.
Well, that's
and they fell into their rhythm.
You just alluded to. Pete has said this all along. They're loose, and you can't do what they're doing without being loose. But here's what Pete's talking about: 30-0 run.
Yeah.
I was at Emma's with my daughter, and I was watching the game on television. I said, we'll get to halftime and we'll run home. Took a little bit longer because I decided to have some chocolate cake, And so I'm sitting there, and it was a little bit late. I said, okay, we'll catch it. By the time I got home, it was over.
Yeah.
I looked up at my clock, and I looked up at the phone, and I went, what just happened? And I said, UConn just happened. They go on runs, and it was like 50-something minutes of real time that team didn't score a basket.
Right.
50-something minutes of real time.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. 30-0 run against one of the best teams in the country. Their MOV that I've alluded to all of this time, what am I talking about? It's margin of victory. They beat Illinois by 25 points. They're making people quit. They're making people give up. That's the sign of a great team. What's their total MOV right now, Pete? 1-1-1. They're 111 points on their margin of victory.
On the plus.
On the plus side. On the plus side. All right. So
shall we take a look at the West, or you got?
I'm going to run right into Alabama here, because that's who they're going to play. So UConn comes up, and Alabama, I didn't have this team, but they're talented.
I don't know how many people did.
I don't know a lot of people did. Their record wasn't great. They lost a lot from last year's team, which they had a really good team. Noah Clowney was on last year's team. They had some really good pieces to last year's team that aren't here now, but they're doing great. Mark Sears is one of the best players in the tournament. That's going to be a tough cover for UConn. And I don't know that UConn's seen a team as athletic as this, as they have with the upcoming Alabama game. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. Again, Alabama went 36 of 62 from three-point range. They took 36 shots. They were 16 of 36 when they took those. It's 44.4% from three-point range. If they can do that against UConn, that's going to be awesome. Now, Coach Oates This is unbelievable what this young man has done with this program, because when you think Alabama, you don't think basketball. Let's be honest, people. You think football.
Roll Tide.
You think pigskin. You think Lou Saban. You think of the great coaches that they've had there along, but you really don't think about basketball. This is Alabama's first Final Four ever. And what a tribute to Coach Oates to get it going there. They're doing great. How did they get it? I call it SNS cheesecake. All right, back in New York, my man Andy Kahn and his dad, they used to sell the SNS cheesecakes, some of the best cheesecake you've ever had in your life, Pete. The SNS comes from Mark Sears, having an unbelievable year, unbelievable tournament, 21 a game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. He shows up in more categories than Amazon, and he's just unbelievable. The other night, he just goes crazy the other night and just really goes 7 for 14 from three-point range, hammers the absolute night, all night he hammers North Carolina, and North Carolina I thought was a really, really good team. The other piece of that was Jiren Stevenson, who came off the bench for them, and he came off the bench in 25 minutes. He was 7-11 from field goals. He was 5 for 8 from three-point range, had 19 points. So the two of those guys took the preponderance, the majority of all their three-point shots. But boy, oh boy, they're cooking with gasoline. When they went in against North Carolina, they had 24, 18, 19, and 19 for 4 starters. Those were their scoring totals. 24 for Sears, 18, 19, and 19. They got a nice 1, 2, 3 there. I don't know that there's enough there to stay up with UConn.
That's what I'm saying. These games looked like they were dogfights.
You
know what I mean? Like these are down and dirty, contested, gritty games that they cranked out and they found a way to win. But UConn saps your will to win.
Everybody comes in looking like this. It's like when they used to fight Mike Tyson. Everybody comes into the ring looking pretty good, and then you get in there and, you go, oh, God, here we go. I'm going to get punched in the face by this guy. And I think that's what happens with UConn a little bit. Everybody gets out there. There's a little bit of that false bravado, but everybody knows what they did last year. This is no surprise. That's what makes it, what they're doing right now, even that much more intimidating, even that much more of a brand, marketing brand stamp here, as we're the best team in the country for the last 24 months. We're the best team in the country for a long, long time. So we'll go into a little bit of what's making them click right now, but they just have so many pieces. The guy nobody's talking about right now had the best year of the year for them is Alex Karabam. And right now, nobody's even talking about him. You've got, some great, great play coming, from some of their different players. But right now, Cam Spencer's playing great. Newton's their All-American. They have Stephen Castle is going to be a pro. Stephen Castle is going to be a pro for them. So you're looking at a group of guys, and then they're bringing guys off the bench that you're looking at going, my God, this guy's great too. And they just have guys that don't play that are coming off the bench. And I think Spencer kind of put their stuff into he kind of capsulized what their whole thing is about, because I've really been interested what their whole thing is about. And Spencer says it's the way they talk to each other, out on the floor. You're not getting enough shots? Well, it's not your night. Get on defense. Play hard. Get after it. You're not getting enough looks? Then we don't care. Get after it and play defense, play hard. You never let anything impact your effort. And I think that's where they're at right now. They're just playing at such a high level of intensity. And Danny Hurley is the guy who's pushing them that way. If you look at UConn, all of their national titles that they have, if they win this one, it'll be either 6 or 7. But all of them have been done since 1999.
Yeah.
That's what makes that ridiculous. So if you're talking about the new millennium standard, you're talking about UConn.
Yeah.
You're talking about a new millennium standard. You're talking about Jim Calhoun, Kevin Ollie, now Danny Hurley, and boy, oh boy, these standards are going to be hard to eclipse, because I don't know what happens in stores. I really don't know what happens down at UConn. But when their team gets on a run, it's like nobody else exists.
Yeah.
When they went, back in, I watched one time they were in a 5 overtime game in a Big East tournament against Syracuse, and you'd think they'd be exhausted. They come out and it came close to, or they won the national title that year. Kemba Walker, they just get a guard and he gets going, and Napier, he gets going. I mean, they just seem to be able to really, really get going to kind of make everybody else invisible. It's this kind of weird thing. But right now, I think that they would have been better off matched up with either of the two teams on the other side than they would be with Alabama. All right, so let's go to Purdue on the other side, and let's go to NC State. Cinderella, the big fella. We've been calling him all year long. He's the big fella, Cinderella. But we're going to call that a 2 DJ party right there. They showed up at somebody's house, and they got a lot of money, and they're putting on a 16th birthday party, and they got 2 DJs going on down there. All right, let's go to Purdue first, because they're the big guy, the big Z. People just aren't really absorbing, I think, what's going on right now with this young man. 40 points, 16 rebounds today.
He's carrying them on his back.
And had a rough day from the free throw line. He didn't play well from the free throw line today. At the end of the game, he missed about 6 free throws at the end of that game. He could have had almost 50 points today. And then you go to Dalton Connect, who is from Tennessee, and a great story there too. It's something we'll go back at another time. DJ Burns and Dalton, they didn't start at their respective schools at Tennessee and NC State right now. And we've hammered the portal, and we don't think it's very good for basketball. But there are some success stories that come out of the portal. And maybe we should, at another week, Pete, as things slow down here, maybe spend a little bit of time on some of the portal success stories that have been there. Dalton Connect, obviously, from northern Colorado all the way to Tennessee. Now he's at Tennessee. He's all SEC Player of the Year. He got a chance to go to the Elite Eight, and most likely now is an NBA lottery pick. So in just a very, very short amount of time, you can go what I refer to as spiral, because what happens after you go viral is you go spiral. And Dalton Connect came into Tennessee, and he went spiral. DJ Burns came in after a career at Winthrop. DJ Burns, the big fella, Cinderella, actually started at Tennessee, did a redshirt year there, transferred to Winthrop and did great things at Winthrop, and then wound up at NC State. And so these are some of the stories that we'll tell also, because we like to present a full picture on the show here. We'll hammer the portal every day of the week. We'll hammer the NIL twice on Sunday. Today's Sunday, so we'll hammer it twice. Easter Sunday. Maybe true college basketball will resurrect itself, although we're not holding our breath for that. But Dalton Connect had 37 points, but the interesting thing was it took him 31 shots. He was 14 of 31. And at the end of the game, I thought forced some shots and didn't really allow the ball to move freely and missed some shots there that allowed Purdue to win that game. And you look at Zach Edey, he got 40 points on 21 baskets, 13 out of 21. Obviously, a bunch of his were on the free throw line as well. But he's high value, Zach Edey. He's 14 to 22 from the free throw line, and 6 of those probably were missed at the very end of the game, which I was a little surprised at. I have always been in really, really high favor of this young man, and we've talked about him. Today, I did see a little bit of what people are saying, though. He looked a little bit, because he was getting so much attention, so much bump and grind. He had 40 points, too, and 16 rebounds, but he did look at times to be almost like he was having a little bit of trouble putting it all together, in terms of running the floor and getting up and down. I think he played great, but I did see a little bit of tonight why people have reservations about him, but we don't have that type of reservation. I think he's a very, very strong draft pick. Certainly belongs in the top 7. He was unbelievable today. The guy that's making Purdue click right now, because you're eclipsed by the big fella. Everybody else on that team, I dare anybody to give me one other person's name on that team. Give me anybody who has them in their bracket. Give me one other guy's name on that team. Now, we do the show, we follow it, so I know, a couple of them, but they've really been a one-man operation. But the young gentleman that I want to bring into the spotlight tonight is Braden Smith, because so much attention was put on Tyler Kolek from Marquette. He's the best point guard in the tournament. He's the best point guard in the country. Well, Braden Smith had 15 assists the other night. Absolutely ran a show that was unbelievable. Tonight, again, played very, very well. And if you remember back a couple of shows ago, we talked about him having a little bit, I don't know if it was in the Big Ten tournament or when it occurred, but he had a little bit of a knee injury, which it looked like it could be serious. It looked like it could have been not serious. He went to the locker room. Everybody was holding their breath. He came back. He was okay. It was a little bit of an injury, not anything significant. He was able to fight and play through it. But now you know why the Purdue Nation, the Boilermaker Nation, was holding their breath as much as they were, because this is the straw that stirs their drink. And if I'm NC State, and I know Coach Cates has done an unbelievable job, you're going to have to pay significant amount of attention to making sure that this guy doesn't stir the drink.
All right, I got a question for you, though.
Go.
Looking at Purdue coming from the round of 32 into the 16 to the 8, they had some blowout wins, and now does it look like they're running out of gas? So they went from winning by, I don't know, 30, nearly 30, to 12 to 6. Are they running out of gas?
I think they're feeling a little bit of pressure. UConn is loose. I don't know what makes them so loose, but they're loose. And we talked about this a week or two ago. If anything's going to get this Purdue team, it's going to be that they get tight. It's going to be that they get tight. And they looked a little tight today. They looked a little tight today. And that Duke team looked tight today also. Filipowski's foul at the end there was absolutely terrible foul on his part, not on the referee's part, on his part. You have 4 fouls. You're late in the game. You can't afford to foul out.
Right.
Not that, I don't know if it impacts the game or has any great difference in what actually occurred in the game, because they were down by a good bit there. And NC State was just in that basketball rhythm where they're coming down, what we referred to in the business as coming downhill. NC State's been coming downhill in the second half of every single game they've played since the ACC tournament. So when you saw that happen, and if Filipowski stays in the game, does it change things? I think at least I couldn't predict the future.
I think
but
at that point, weren't they down by double digits at that point?
It was like 10.
When he fouled out?
Yeah, he fouled out, but there was 4 minutes and change left in the game.
True.
And the foul wasn't what I would say was a good foul.
Yeah, that wasn't a quality foul.
It wasn't. It wasn't a quality foul. And at that point, you can't commit any foul, let alone a low-quality foul like that.
Right.
And I thought at that moment, they kind of discombobulated, didn't take good shots, and I was really surprised at how terrible their press was when they came out at the end of the game, tried to extend the floor. They gave up 3 point-blank layups to NC State right at the end of the game under that basket in some kind of press that they were in. I don't know what you would call it. Might have been man-to-man. They were running and jumping a little bit, but, man, they didn't have any basket coverage, and that's the first thing you need to do when you're doing that at the end of the game is you need to stop the other team from scoring. And they just ran the ball right down the middle of the floor. Their guards passed the ball beautifully, but they put it right down the middle of the floor 3 times in a row on Duke's press for layups. And 2 of those layups resulted in 3-point plays.
Yeah.
In fouls, the traditional 3-point plays, because once DJ Burns gets half of his body turned like that, and you foul him, he's still going to make the shot. He's got that beautiful left-hand touch, and that's what I say about left-handers. You're fouling him on his right side. It's leaving his whole left side open, and it's just amazing that.
And he had some great touch on a couple of those shots that I saw.
He's amazing,
yeah.
And he does a great touch. And when he gets over that left-hand shoulder, he's really, really difficult.
Yep.
And so I think that's going to be the challenge moving forward, and I think some teams have kind of got caught by surprise here because by not being able to have a plan to stop him, you can't stop the rest of them. And if you don't stop him, and if you don't stop Zach Edey this upcoming game, if that 5 spot isn't rectified, if Zach Edey goes for 40 against NC State or DJ Burns goes for 24 and 12, you're going to have a rough night on either side of that. I think that's going to be a really, really good game. In talking about Edey, this is a really, really cool accomplishment that I picked up on Twitter. It was Fox Sports Research that got it, so we'll give them their bibliography, we'll give them their footnote. But Zach Edey has had 900 points and 450 rebounds. That has not been done, in a season.
Holy cow.
Almost 1,000 points in one season. So you have 900 points, 450 rebounds. Has not been done since 1978, 1979. Great Celtic. Who did it? Who did it, Pete?
Who had that many points?
Great Celtic player.
McHale?
900 points and 450 rebounds in his final year of college.
Bird?
Larry Bird. 78-79. What a year. And that has not been done in college basketball until right now. And that is an unbelievable stat. All right, let me just give you a little piece of NC State. The big fella is Cinderella, and he is just a load inside. But when I said there's 2 DJs that have been invited to this party, the big fella's certainly got a lot of notoriety because he's a personality. You know, he's one of those rare types that people just fall in love with and focus on. But DJ Horn, the other DJ that's been invited to this party, they got DJ Burns, they got DJ Horn. He's been unbelievable. His guard play has been stellar. His guard play has been absolutely superb. And I just wanted to give a shout out because he's been one of the guys that's making that NC State team go. And they go back way into the ACC tournament. And they talk about a seminal moment in this ACC whole saga and also with NC State. Because as we talk about a lot on the show, we talk about the carousel. We talk about all the coaching changes. When we're not talking out of school here, when we would tell you that in the beginning of this whole thing, before the ACC tournament started, and there was a jump shot at the buzzer that propelled them into a win that then started their whole streak. People say if that ball doesn't go in, Kerry Keats is no longer the basketball coach at NC State. And that's probably pretty
true,
accurate
yeah.
assessment. Now, he's going to be thought of as one of the greatest coaches in NC State history.
Yeah.
That ball can bounce funny ways, and when it does, my God. But 2 DJs at this party. All right, I wanted to take you into our coaching circle just a little bit here to close out. And because we're live, I got to make sure Pete's going to keep me on the clock here and make sure we close on time tonight so we don't get any hits. All right, so the Final Four right now shapes up Connecticut against Alabama. That's going to be a great game, I think. I think if there's a team that can stay with UConn right now in this whole thing, it's going to be Purdue with their big fella going against Donovan Clingan, or it's going to be Alabama and this Mark Sears team that's led with their three-point shooting. If they come out and shoot well, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. I remember watching Noah Clowney last year for this team, 6'10", 220 pounds, outside shooting three-pointers. And I'm sitting there going, why don't they get him inside? But this is their philosophy. This is their culture. They're going to shoot a lot of three balls. When I tell you 36 out of 62, you know, we're talking about more than 50% of their total shots were from three-point range. So that's what's going to happen on the Alabama side. What's going to happen on the UConn side is they're going to just keep doing what they do. They're not going to change. They're not going to have anything different than what they do. Their rotations will be the same. Their play calls will be similar. But if you watch them on offense, they're absolutely right now. Danny Hurley alluded to it as speed dial.
Yeah.
They're absolutely on speed dial right now because as many plays as they run, and I'll say this, and I say this honestly because I'm a basketball coach, and I know that with each team you have in your gym, you'll get a sense because you'll have some guys running around like their heads on fire. They'll get a sense of how many plays your team can actually absorb. And that's what's so amazing about this UConn team is their level of absorption, their level of play absorption, because they have a lot of plays. And they have a lot of intricate plays where there's a lot of moving pieces and everything's going around, and then they try and go bang, bang, bang. So if they're looking for Donovan Clingan out on the block, you're going to see a couple of exchanges with the guards, a little ball movement, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then bang, they're going into the spot that they want it. If they want to get Cam Spencer, they're going to run some of their plays where they have, you know, a Spain or a Ram or some of the other things that are nouveau in the game these days where we're screening the screen or flaring out off or a pick and roll, different things like that that just really, really get their shooters open. And when that young man Spencer's open, he's deadly. And they have some other good shooters on the team as well. So if you really, really want to break down and watch, I think the coaching matchup between Hurley and Oates is going to be really critical. Oates has to get them off their rhythm.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like for him. I don't know what he can come up with in this amount of time in order to because here's what happens in the coaching business. I'll be very, very straight and honest with you. There's an element of fear that sets in with coaches that says, if I change it now, they'll blame me if we lose. So we've been doing this, we've been doing this, we've been doing this, we've been having great success.
Yeah.
But if you look at the UConn game and you say everybody does the same thing that they're doing against them and they dismantle them, as a coach, you would sit there and say, maybe we got to try something different. But then the fear sets in because now you've placed the focus on yourself. And if it doesn't work, you went away from everything that was tried and true that got you to the point. The lady or the young girl that brought you to the dance, dance with the girl that brought you to the dance is a famous saying in basketball. Stay with the things that brought you to your success is basically what that says. And then you step off of it and try something different. And they say, well, why did he do that? He cost his team the game. And so that's where the fear kind of sets in. But if you're Alabama right now, you have one of two thoughts going on inside your mindset if you're Coach Oates and your staff. You're sitting there around a hotel room, and you're having your staff
Probably
meeting.
right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right this minute.
Yeah.
No. Or you're on an airplane, and you're in the back of the airplane, and you're all huddled up with your phones out, your film systems on, your computers rocking and rolling, and they're going through everything absolutely right now. And they're all looking around, and they're going to have either a look on their face that says, we're okay. We don't need anything different. We don't need anything funny. We don't need any gimmicky stuff to try and slow this team down. Or they're sitting there like Apollo Creed's manager when he was watching Rocky hit the beef. And he said, you better come in here, champ, and look at this guy because we got to slow him down because he's a buzzsaw. Well, the same thing is true if you're UConn sitting there right now. And if you're the Alabama coaching staff, you're sitting there in one vein going, we're okay. We have the athletes to match this. We have the game plan to match this. We're going to stick with exactly what we said we're going to do. Second piece, that other twin pops up on the other shoulder, and the coaching staff sitting there, and they go, oh, my God, have you seen this guy hit the beef? Have you watched this play?
Coach, I swear, if you every UConn player and the coach up to a brainwave monitor, they're all in sync.
All in the same. EKGs for
They're
the
all
UConn
the same,
team
man.
are lock and load. You're 100% right, Pete. They all have the same mindset. That's culture.
Yeah.
That's culture. And they're all unselfish. They all play for each other. That's a really cool thing about watching this team. Really, really cool thing about watching them. But again, when you go into that, that whole coaching thing, if you're Oates and I'm him, I'm sitting there and that other evil twin pops up on my other shoulder and says, you can't stop this team. They're smoking everybody. They beat Illinois by 25. You're not going to be able to slow them down unless you show them something different. Unless you try something that's outside the box that surprises them, slows them down, go into a zone, press, try something that's going to, mix up your bag a little bit because everybody that's come at UConn, mano a mano, stood in the middle of the ring with UConn has gone down. And they've gone down to a TKO.
Yeah.
They have not stood the test of time. They have not been standing at the end of that fight. They have gone down to TKO and flat-out KOs. And so if you're Mark Sears, and you're watching that Alabama group and you're saying, okay, we're going to shoot a lot of threes, okay? If they don't go in, you might get scorched in transition defense by this UConn team. They're so fast. They get out so well. They move the ball with such integrity that if some of those three-point shots don't go in, they're going to blast you on the other side. And they're going to get into that UConn roll, and they're going to absolutely smoke you. So if you come out and don't shoot well, Alabama, you better have the defensive intensity on the other side to run back, stop the ball, get out and cover that first pass, get out and cover that second pass, and make sure you don't get penetrated via dribble or it's over. It will be absolutely over. Your trip to the Final Four will be great. First Final Four in Alabama history.
Thanks
for
coming.
Packed up, ready to roll,
Right.
and on the bus in 2 hours.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, so we're going to be honest about that. You're going to have to maybe think about doing something that would slow them down. What is it? I don't know. But you gotta give it some consideration, I would say, if I was either one of those teams. Okay, so now you go into the Purdue-NC State matchup. This, I thought Filipowski's team, Duke, was going to win. Set up a great matchup between Filipowski and Zach Edey.
Edey, yeah.
And then, now we got DJ Burns and Zach Edey. That's just as good. It's a great matchup.
That's going to be a great matchup.
And then I thought you'd have Donovan Clingan, the big man inside. So it's been a reemergence of the big man as well in college basketball. A little bit more of a focus on the inside as well. But as you see, all of the mid-range players in basketball are no longer. You're either dunking it at the rim as a 7'4" center, a 6'9", a 6'10" center. You're getting all that inside action because all the other 4 players are standing out above the 3-point line.
Yep.
And when they get that ball moving, that shot's going up in the air. All right. And this is what I say to people, and this is what I say to my own team. If you come down and move the ball over to one side of the floor or another and take that shot, you're somewhere in the low 30s as far as that shot going in on a success rate. If you get the ball and you move it and pass it one time, only one time, over reversal to the other side of the floor to another teammate, your shot totals go up about 5 points. So you would go from, say, 33% to 38% just by moving, passing, and reversing the ball to the other side. Why? Shooters get better setups. They also feel like they're better shooting off the pass because somebody passed them the ball. Somebody wanted them to shoot the ball. It creates confidence. It creates camaraderie. It creates team spirit. That's what UConn's got going on right now. If you reverse the ball back across that way, and this is what UConn does tremendously in transition, is they'll get it down. As soon as they go, they'll get that quick reversal going. They'll shoot it if they have it. But where they come back is you get an extra 3 or 4 points when you reverse that ball a second time. So you go from 32-33 to 37-38 on one reversal, come back to the other side, and you're into the 40-42 range off that second reversal. That's what UConn's doing better than anybody. They get that ball moving, bang, 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 and then you don't really have a chance. You know, NC State Purdue coaching matchup is going to be a really good one as well. Coach Painter has been much maligned, and you can see the stress on him, honestly. You can see the stress on their team. That's why one of the things as a head coach, I always try and kind of, in my own demeanor, and when I talk to other people in demeanor, be like Barack Obama when you're coaching a basketball game. Be cool. Sang-froid. Have a really, really good demeanor about you because your team will reflect that. And if you ever watch Coach Painter on the sidelines, he has a tendency to look a little tight. He has a tendency to look a little, tense. And sometimes that rubs off on your team as well. Yeah. And if you look at Danny Hurley, he's out there loose doing his thing, and his team has reflected that as well.
And he's also high energy the entire game.
No question. And I think if you get anything from Painter a little bit, I don't know, loosen the tie, smile a little bit. It's hard. It's hard, Coach. I know it is. But, just try something. Maybe break out the water guns that University of Illinois had. But that matchup right there, Coach Kerry Cates now has come up into some rarefied air because, as I said, like 3 weeks ago, people had his name on a hot seat name. His seat was very, very hot. Well, he's sitting like deadly do-right right now on an ice cube. He's sitting on a big old ice cube right now because he's about ready to go into rarefied air. NC State's going to have to come back with a huge contract. They're going to have to come back and really, really make this a really good situation for him, probably with resources, probably with NIL money. This is big for NC State's program right here.
Yeah,
because
that's huge. Yeah.
This reestablishes them back to the days of Monty Tao, David Thompson, the original alley-oop combination, Burleson, the 7'4" center, a lot like they had with Zach Edey right now in Purdue. They had the big center inside, the great point guard in Monty Tao, David Thompson, the mercurial, unbelievably great talent on the wing. So that's the last time NC State went, and then Valvano's team, and so those are really the anomalies in the NC State program. Jim Valvano, the great coach out of New York, with his team. Derek Wittenberg shot an air ball. It was caught by Cozell McQueen and dunked back in the basket at the end of the game for them to win, and created a great, great upset victory for them as well. And so that's NC State's legacy, but that's, Jim Valvano, that legacy, goes back into the 90s, probably the 80s, maybe even, when that occurred. So it's been a really, really long time for this NC State team. And kudos to them because they were no one in consideration. Pete was one of the only guys that really, really had them, marked up and ready to go. All right. Before we get out of here, again, I'm begging the NCAA to put the NIT at the end of the year. Put it somewhere else. Right now, I would give anybody $100 if they could tell me all 4 teams that are in the NIT final right now. And I was sitting there in my living room going, I always used to go to the NIT. I love going down there. Maybe this week I'll go down and see if the NIT is, see what's happening down there in Madison Square Garden. I'll go down, take a look around, and we'll have a little in-the-zone trip down into Madison Square Garden. It's no longer in the Garden.
Isn't it in Vegas?
They moved it. Yeah, they moved it out to Vegas. And so now you're going to watch it on TV Tuesday and Wednesday. Nobody's going to care. Ho-hum. But I wanted to just give a shout-out to my guys at Seton Hall, the Pirates. A lot of teams turned down the bid. They didn't. They playing great basketball. Shaw Holloway doing Seton Hall solid. They're in the Final Four, and they're ready to roll. They're going up against a Georgia team. I'll give you a quick Georgia note. When we signed to Donald Foyle at Colgate, it was in November. And so as an assistant coach, it was like I had a chip in my pocket. I went through the entire year calling all of these great players. Matt Langle, who's at Colgate, was one of them. And also the coach who's at Georgia right now, Michael White, was one of the young point guards that I called. Say, hey, come on over here. Mike White went to Mississippi and went on somewhere else, but now he's a great coach at Georgia, and that's a funny story. They're playing up against Seton Hall as in the finals as well, in that Final Four. On the other side, you got Utah and Indiana State doing great stuff. That's the NIT. I wanted to mention them, because they're doing good things, and it's
still
just
playing.
a shame because it's such a great tournament, and right now it's kind of been diminished. Right now it's kind of got lost in all of this, and you have the women's tournaments on the surge, the men's tournaments, doing a great thing as always.
Yep.
There's just not a lot of light for the NIT right now. Move it over. Hey, we're in the zone. Have a great week, folks. See you next week.